Alright, before I take you inside, I want to start off with a little background information. So first we're going to start off with the symbolism of the eagle in connection with Osiris and the Nile flood. In the Roman period, the eagle is not only found with Zeus, but also with Serapis, which is found with Jesus worship. It may even be found with Osiris Canopus. In most of these cases, the eagle carries the bust of Serapis or one or two canopi on its back, and it spreads its wings widely as if it's flying. A wreath which surrounds the bottom of the jar. These Osiris Canopus was a coastal town in Egypt where they worshipped Osiris. Just throw that in there just in case people didn't know that. And they worshipped him as a human head on a vase. That was his symbol there. And a wreath would surround the bottom of that jar. Osiris Canopus seems to have assumed an essential place in the Egyptian cults in Roman times. So this is what you see when you see these eagles all throughout the Vatican in the little shields. The god was also found on a pedestal at the feet of the Isis statue in the Serapeum of Luxor, and two of them were on the same bench as Isis in the small Isium of Ras Isoda, both temples being creations of 2nd century AD. This confirms that Osiris Canopus was closely associated with Isis. In Italy, the sight of an Osiris Canopus carried along by a priest in the processions or for the ritual of the Isaiah cult was common enough to be represented on the columns of the Isium Campines and on a relief. It is noted that on most of all these reliefs that the so-called Osiris Canopus are in fact often confused with the canoptic jars. It is possible that the Roman Isaiah clergy used both types without distinction. Statues of priests holding an Osiris Canopus have survived both in Egypt and in Italy. The Osiris Canopus of Isium Campines must have stood inside the cellar together with the statue of Isis. So this is them appropriating another culture behind closed doors. Alright, we're finna go through the front doors now. I know y'all been waiting on this. Those are the keys that Jesus supposedly gave Peter. I guess he wanted Peter to take the wheel for a little while. So this is what you see when you first walk in. You look around and see all the artwork. It's beautiful. You can't hate. You look up and you notice the designs on the roof. That would be the first thing I would notice. You look closely, you notice that the roofs are made into a honeycomb shape, like a beehive, with the sun shining through. Now I'm finna show y'all why it's designed this way. And also you see the bees along the walls. I'm gonna explain that also. So in Egyptian mythology, bees represented the royalty of the goddess Net, the sun god Ra, and the temple of the goddess Net known as the house of the bee. Bees grew from the tears of the sun god Ra when they landed on the desert sand. That's from the ancient writings of Tot. According to one ancient Egyptian myth, honeybees were the tears of the sun god Ra. In this context, the bee was seen as the messenger of the gods. So this is why these priests have adopted this concept. Falling down like tears towards the earth and man to pass on some secret message. I guess this is their justification for spreading this false religion disguised as sun worship and moon worship. It's a celestial worship. The above symbol was called the Ujat in ancient times. It is now more commonly called the Eye of Ra or the Eye of Horus. It represents the eye of the Egyptian falcon god Horus or Heru, it was associated with the sun god Ra. It is supposed to be where the tears or bees came from. Another place this information is found is in the salt magical papyrus. When Ra weeps again, the water which flows from his eyes upon the ground turns into working bees. They work in flowers and trees of every kind, and wax and honey come into being. The sun god Ra was in the creation myths of the Egyptians, the framer of the earth and sea, and the god who caused the Nile flood. His right eye was the sun, and his left eye was the moon. And when he opened his eyes, there was a light. In these two contexts, bees and their products, honey and wax, are said to come from water, which there is good reason for believing Egyptians regarded as one of the principal sources of life, one of the givers of life. In Egypt, then, we find myths about the origin of bees and honey, the bee used as a symbol to express royalty. And that's why you'll see these children holding them up on those little plaques on the wall, because those are replacing the royalty that you would normally see, the so-called priesthood. Beekeeping practiced many thousands of years ago, in honey and wax used by all classes. The bee and her products thus played no mean part in the life of those wonderful people of the ancient Egyptians. I don't know why they felt the need to throw that in, but hey, you know how white people do. So anyways, for a little bit more information on the bee, I'm going to read you this excerpt from Symbols in Art, Religion, and Culture. In ancient Egypt, the bee was associated with Lower Egypt, with its extensively irrigated lands full of flowering plants, and where the bee was chosen as a symbol for the country. So I guess white people lied in the last excerpt. After the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt, this symbol was incorporated in the title usually preceding the throne, name of a pharaoh, and expresses the unity of the two realms, he of the sage, end of the bee. An image of the bee was even positioned next to the king's cartouche. In Nisira's sun temple, beekeepers are shown blowing smoke into beehives as they are removing the honeycombs. After extracting the honey from the combs, it was stained and poured into earthen jars that were then sealed. Honey treated in this manner could be kept for years. So honey was a part of the ancient Egyptians' life and culture. So now we have the background on these honeycomb roofs and the bees we will see later on the wall.